Thank you for tuning in to The Political Soup, where you hear editorial about the issues of the day and political philosophy. Your hosts are Nick Alex, our progressive, Dana and Pugh, our conservative, Paul Laws, our classical liberal, and here is our moderator and your host, John Toll.
Hello again, I'm John Toll, and welcome to the Political Soup podcast, where we talk about today's political events. Today we're going to be talking about a little bit of a different sort of topic. Instead of looking at an article that we'd usually put up on the screen down here in the bottom, we're actually going to be talking about the vice presidential debate between Vice President Biden and our good friend Mr. Ryan, or Congressman Ryan if you prefer. So I'm not really going to put a big lead into this. You've probably seen the debate, and we'll post a link down to YouTube in case you haven't, or you want to go look at some of the highlights of it. But I am just going to throw this out to the right side, and I'm going to talk with Danon first, and then we'll probably just go down the line and give Mitch and Nick and Paul a chance to address their opinions on how things went, whether they think that either side did a good job or not, whether there were real details or just a lot of huffing and puffing. So, Dana, why don't you give us a shot and tell us what you think? What was your first impression?
The overall impressions, I guess, was that it doesn't seem to be an unusual opinion. I guess that Vice President Biden was somewhat rude and, I guess, I don't know, aggressive maybe. I guess that's my overall opinion. It's hard to say much more than that. I think I guess the Democratic Party and maybe some in the media tried to accuse Paul Ryan of lies, tried to catch him in a lie and here and there, and I don't think that those necessarily stuck or were necessarily valid when all the facts came in, but. That's about all I have to say on that in terms of overall impressions.
Okay, all right. We'll come back to you for some of the details of it. Mitch, what was your thoughts overall?
In hindsight, as I was watching it, the most entertaining political debate I've ever seen, hands down.
Why?
Because of Joe Biden, quite frankly. He was kind of a clown. In hindsight, not at all appropriate. Pretty much rude the whole time, but it was enjoying to watch. It was entertaining to watch. Now, as far as the content of it, I think that there were a lot of issues thrown out and a lot of statistics and whatnot, and I hate that. I have trouble keeping up. I don't know what's real, what's fact, what's not. So what I liked was more the fact that Joe Biden would answer questions, Paul Ryan would evade questions, and that's the kind of stuff that I noticed. And then if we get in, I think we're going to get into some of the specific issues later, so I have opinions there too. But,
okay.
Generally speaking, Biden was pretty rude. But it was entertaining for people like me that like words like malarkey. And I don't know. It was entertaining, but flawed, yes.
Okay, all right. Nick, give us your shot.
To me, it's the thing that I take away from this is, at least this part of, or this debate, this specific debate, is anybody who doesn't understand who they're voting for now, if they can't see the stark difference in position, then I don't know what else could possibly be done for people to make up their minds. The two visions couldn't be more opposite of each other. And quite frankly, I think that was my key takeaway of the debate. I mean, give me a break. Who cares if he was rude or if he was aggressive or whatnot? A debate is a debate, and the thing that you should be looking for out of a debate is, do you understand where people stand on the issues? Where they will, what's their vision for the future? And if you didn't come away from that debate, that one single debate, with that difference in mind. Or if you couldn't see it through the exchanges between the two congressmen. I'm not trying to say who did better job, by the way. I'm just saying if you can't walk away from that debate knowing that there's a stark difference between how each party wants to approach governing the country, then I don't know what else is left to do for people to make up their mind. I mean, you should be able to make up your mind. Now, the unfortunate thing is it was the vice presidential debate. It wasn't the presidential debate. It was the people, number 2 on the ticket. I'd like to see that kind of a debate from number ones, quite frankly.
Okay, so that's an even-handed answer, but part of the question is what was your impression of the individual sides? I mean, Mitch didn't necessarily pick a side, but he said that there were particular traits that really stuck out in his mind. Dan gave a similar,
I guess the way I walk away from it is, clearly I felt that. And again, it feels good to be able to say this, considering I couldn't say it after the first debate with President Obama. It felt good to have somebody that was in command of the evening and be able to articulate, why he believes in what he believes. I mean, you can make fun of Joe Biden all you want and say he's rude or say he's a clown or whatever, but to hear him articulate, for example, how he's a staunch Catholic, and how he is able to say, what, as a Catholic, I believe that life begins at conception, but that doesn't mean that I can go and take my moral compass and impose it on other people that might not share it. I thought that was important. I think it was great to be able to hear somebody articulate passionately why they believe something personally, but don't necessarily push that onto others, and that's what makes him pro-choice, even though personally he is, he affirms the Catholic view of when life begins. Conversely, I saw from Congressman Moran, I have to agree with Mitch. He seemed to evade a lot of questions. He didn't make the cause for anything. He was given an opportunity to talk through the math. Again, we talk about taking tax rates down 20%, but you're also going to be revenue neutral. You're in a debate. You have absolute opportunity to take people through the math and help them understand why that proposal can work. And yet again, he evades the question and says he can't go through the math. And so I think from a standpoint of pushing forward the party platform, I don't even think it was close. I think clearly Joe Biden articulated support for him and President Obama's positions a lot more clearly and forcefully than Congressman Ryan did for him and Governor Romney's.
Okay, that sums it up. I think we might have a couple people that might disagree with you here.
Of course.
Paul, what do you think?
We wouldn't have a show if we didn't.
Right.
Well, I think we see what we want to see. The reality is, when it comes right down to it, both of these guys are socialist. I mean, we have heavy socialist on the Biden side, and socialist light on the Ryan side. It's just the way it is. But as far as how the debate went, Biden was rude. There's no question about that. I think that Paul Ryan was a little bit more prepared than what you guys believe, but he got cut off a whole lot. I don't agree with his message really. I think that he doesn't tend to want to cut enough. But frankly, he was a little bit meek. I think, I don't know, maybe he was trying to be respectful, but it was a little bit meek, and I think he was seen as a little bit less prepared, possibly because of that. But when it comes down to it, there's not much difference in the two. We're not talking, eliminating huge government programs. We're talking about shrinking them versus growing them. There's not much difference.
So your opinion was that
both sides are socialists. Is that all you got?
No, I told you my opinion about how they did. Biden was rude.
I know. I'm just giving you grief. All right, now.
But is that? Can I ask Paul a follow up on that?
Yeah, go ahead.
You said he was rude, but was there anything about his performance that you thought was effective?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. He's a very polished politician. He knows exactly the heartstrings to play, and he's good at what he does.
Wait, what do you mean about heartstrings? Because I thought that Paul Ryan was going more for pathos than anything, and picking the here's my real life story of someone I know, and here the whole story about his.
Oh, come on, they both did that.
Everybody does that all the time.
Everybody does that, but I think
Clinton perfected that.
It didn't feel nearly as manipulative when Biden was doing it. He was talking about himself more than anything and his experience. And
to you, to you, it didn't feel.
Me. Oh, well, of course. That's all of these. Any statement that any of us makes is going to have that to you or to me in front of it.
But I mean, a lot of this comes out of worldview too. I mean, a lot of this comes out of who you sympathize with. It's some of it, sure, it is a little bit of how much you feel at the moment that they're saying, but a lot of it is who you sympathize with from the beginning. I mean, I know very few minds that these debates have changed.
But the polls would tell you that's not true, right? I mean, the bump that we've seen since the Romney debate compared to where the polls were prior to that would say
small numbers.
Small numbers. You're talking 3 or 4 percentage points have shifted. That's the thing that, and again, it goes back to my original point, which is I don't understand knowing, and I guess I have to reconcile this with Paul's comment that they're both socialists and they're not very far apart. To me, they are so on opposite ends of the spectrum, and if you don't understand where they stand by now, I don't know what can be done in the next 20 whatever days for somebody to understand anything differently. If you haven't made up your mind, then don't, I don't want to say don't vote, no, but it's just,
I think that about every election, and I think about that before the primaries are over. If you don't know which side you're going to vote for just based on the political party, then you probably shouldn't be voting in the general election, frankly.
Ooh,
particularly,
I'm
not saying you shouldn't be allowed to vote in the general election.
No, I'm not. I know you're not.
Let me throw something out here, guys, for a second.
Well, that's a fact. Some people shouldn't vote.
Mitch, I'm going to cut you off for a second, and Paul, we'll get to you in a second because I know that Nick's going to need to address that. But let me give you an example, and I'll use myself, all right? I have not decided who I'm going to vote for. The reason for that is because I really like some of the policies of one that are unrelated to the policies of the other, but I really dislike certain other things about that candidate that are great about that candidate. So I have to determine which is the lesser of two evils for me. And, who has enough positives to outweigh their negatives, and I haven't determined that yet. Because for me, it's not one side or the other. There's pieces I like of each one, and none of you would agree with me because I would cherry pick pieces that I like out of each of your brains, and that's my problem. I'm not over here and I'm not over there. So
I wouldn't call that a problem.
Well,
I would call that exactly what the democratic process is about. It's about looking at the individual candidates and figuring out which one speaks to your issues the most. And it has, I think, picking based on party is wrong. It's wrong.
I think that people should figure out what ideology they are. That typically people will be conservative or liberal. And from that it points you to the party, and from that it points you to the candidate. Once we get to this part in the election cycle, both candidates are trying to get the same people. They're both trying to appear most moderate, trying to get the same 10%, 20% of people in the middle. And that's why anyone who just casually pays attention to politics at this point in the election cycle starts saying, well, they all sound alike to me. Well, that's because they're basically trying to go for the same people. But if you decide ahead of time, do I believe in bigger government, do I believe in smaller government, who's my candidate?
In all fairness, they actually do kind of govern the same. I mean, you see growth in government in Democrat regimes as well as Republican regimes. I mean, the only difference is in Democrat regimes you see the growth a lot more drastic. But I mean,
really,
we're not seeing any cuts.
Really? Go look at the last two before the Obama administration. Go look at the Bush administration and look at the Clinton administration and see where was the bigger growth in spending.
Look at the Obama administration.
I'm just saying.
I don't buy that argument because you have to look at Congress as well as the president. Clinton had a Republican Congress. Bush had a Democrat Congress for the last 2 years, which is when the spending really skyrocketed.
Oh, but the deficit started piling on well before that.
The deficits are going up, and I agree with Paul there too. Republicans spend way too much. They spend lots more than they should. But if you look at the numbers of year to year of the deficit, they shot way up after 2006. Well, starting in 2007 when the new Congress came in, which was the Democratic Congress.
Now let's jump back a topic or half a topic and addressing a comment that Paul made that Nick wanted to address. Now, Paul, go ahead and state again what you said, and I don't even need to tell you what it is. Just go ahead and say it again.
I just said that not everybody should vote. I mean, you know, the fact is it's pretty simple. It's pretty simple.
Hold on, Nick.
There are a lot of people who will tell you that your civic duty is to go out and vote. But the problem is they're wrong. Your civic duty is not to go out and vote. If you don't know what you're talking about, if you don't know who you're voting for, if you don't know why, if you don't have a good base on why, don't do it. It's not your civic duty to blindly punch numbers. Your civic duty is to educate yourself and then go out and vote.
All right, Nick, go ahead, reply.
I'll agree with that last statement that your civic duty is to educate yourself and go out and vote. I do agree with that. But, I mean, I find it so hypocritical to hear, Paul, just what you say. Basically, you're advocating for people not to vote.
Absolutely.
It's their absolute right to vote however they want to. If they want to vote on the color of somebody's hair or eyes, they should be able to do it. If they want to vote for the guy because he's taller, then they should do it. If they want to vote for somebody because she's a woman, then they should be able to do it. It's their right. It's the right that it's afforded to them in the Constitution. It is a clear, unabridged right. And
I'm not talking about taking that away.
Well, I'm just saying.
I'm talking about them using some common sense. I mean, let's be clear about this.
Yeah, I could sit here and talk about I can't believe how many people on the right will vote against their own economic interests by voting for Republican candidates. But you know, that set aside, you know, yes, common sense is great. It would be nice to see it when people vote. But my hot button or my push button here is I hear about preservation of rights and people's rights. From the Tea Party, from people that are clearly very conservative, to people that I know who love their country, and I don't doubt that for a second. But the moment we start talking about whether or not people can vote, the number of obstacles and hurdles that we will put in front of people is it's mind-boggling. And to me, if there's one right that you have to protect on the Constitution, if there's one right that you have to protect in a representative democracy, whether or not you agree with somebody's policies or not, is their absolute right to vote. And if you
can and should are two very different things, though.
Well, I'm just saying you should be able to make. And again, if somebody makes the wrong decision, so be it. But there is no right that to me that's more important in the Constitution than somebody's right to vote. And the moment we put up obstacles to that, if you claim to be somebody that believes in less government, or if you claim to be in somebody that believes in a strict interpretation of the Constitution, then there's absolutely no place for.
Which I don't, by the way.
What? You don't believe in either one of those things?
I don't believe in a strict interpretation of the Constitution. I don't believe in this particular Constitution. I believe in the previous one, but that's for another day.
Yeah, that's definitely a topic for another day. All right, let me jump topics again, and Mitch, I want to get you involved here in a second, but I'm going to actually point this out to Dana. What Nick said earlier about who commanded the vice presidential debate. So, do you agree or disagree with what Nick said that Biden was the man on top?
Are you asking me? I thought you were asking Mitch.
I'm sorry. I threw Mitch in there.
No, it was to you, Dana.
Yeah, it was to you.
Oh, okay. Oh, do I agree? Yeah, I don't think that's necessarily a good thing. I think he was mean. But yeah, I mean, you can command something without that being a net positive.
Okay.
Kind of like Romney in the presidential debate.
How's that, Mitch?
He was bullied the whole time. When I watched the first presidential debate, Romney was a bully, and that's what I saw. And I would have liked Obama to have risen to the occasion and actually made a debate out of it instead of he just kind of sat back and took it.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with that 100%.
Yeah, I think that the reason we're not talking about that debate is because it was actually fairly cut and dry, and everybody on both sides seems to agree that, the president just kind of hung out while, the new guy tried to step up and did so. So that one's not really as much of a conversation. Well, let's talk about some of the details. Go ahead, Nick.
It must have been the thin air.
I was gonna say I don't really think this one's much of a debate either. I can freely admit that the president lost the first debate, and I will freely admit that the congressman lost the second debate. So,
well, now we're talking about winning and losing. So, and that might be a little bit different. And now, Paul and Dana, who do you think won the debate?
Winning from the standpoint of commanding the time and showing a depth. And again, it's not necessarily about who made the case for a certain issue or something like that. It's about showing command, and that's what we like in our leaders, people that can command a room. And I would have to say it was polar opposites between the first and the second one.
Okay, you know what, Paul, you look like you want to say something about that.
Actually, I really didn't have much to say. I mean, I really don't have any real strong opinions on who won. I can tell you who lost, and that's the American public. But that's.
All right. Well, let's get into some.
You sound like you're trying to spell a book, Paul.
Yeah. No kidding. Well, let's get into some specifics.
Or an ideology.
Speaking of my book.
Yeah. On sale next week by Paul Loss. Now, let's talk about some of the specifics in the debate. I mean. You know what, Mitch? I want you to bring up a topic, whatever floated your boat that came up. Let's talk about a particular topic.
Okay, the one that resonated most with me, and actually Nick already brought it up, was the abortion issue, and I think that Biden answered it in the most correct way you possibly can.
Yeah, I'm glad.
His stance of my faith doesn't allow me to believe in this, or doesn't. My faith is that I believe that life begins with conception. Is my faith, and it's not my right to impose that on others. Perfect answer.
All right, Dana, what's your response to that?
That's such a contrived position that Democrats have carved out for themselves. That's exactly what Kerry has said in the past. I'm pretty sure Al Gore used that. I know Nancy Pelosi has said that before. That's how every Catholic in particular, but Christian Democrat, gets away with trying to play both sides, trying to not be called out on being a hypocrite because
they don't get away with it.
Does it make it any less tolerant?
They don't get away with it.
So contrived. Come on.
If you use logic, you can quickly see through this because, I mean, essentially what they're saying is, I personally believe it's murder, but somebody else doesn't, so it's okay for them. So murder is okay with certain people. It's just not okay for me.
with all due respect, what a bunch of crap. Okay, let me just make it really
exactly what I think about that position.
Okay, all right.
The Democrats
then explain to me.
Because I'll flip it right on you right now, Danon. I'll flip it on you. How somebody that claims to be a Christian or a Catholic who could then turn around and look at the social justice aspects of the Democratic Party and not put don't come on. I don't want to dismiss it any more than you do. This is the case. Is there one Catholic issue abortion? No. I mean, taking care of the poor, providing health care to people, making sure that people aren't suffering. That's
not government's job. That is not government's job.
You know what? It's not government's job it's not government's job to be the moral police and to promote one religious view over somebody else's. If I'm an atheist, then
abortion has nothing to do with a religious belief.
Sure, it does. Because Paul, not everybody believes that life starts at conception, Paul.
Okay, you know what? And that's fine. That's fine. Not everybody believes that life starts in the 3rd year or the 4th year or the 5th. You know, life is just.
Yeah, I know.
As soon as people start talking, that's when life.
Okay, all right, hold on. We're going down. We've fallen off the slippery slope now, so I'm gonna stop you guys because now it's going off a cliff. I'm gonna actually hand this over to Mitch because he hasn't said a whole lot about this. I mean, yeah, you started it with how it resonated with you, but I want your opinion on what all of these guys are saying.
There's a lot of guys.
Let me shrink that down. All being these 3 guys over here that aren't you.
I get what you're saying. There's a lot going on.
Right.
I believe that it's a contrived statement. It's a carry-all statement that a number of candidates have used. Yes, but does that make it any less sincere? Does that undermine the validity of it that everybody's using it? Because quite frankly, it's right in there with freedom of religion and freedom of belief, and it's a matter of personal liberty, in my opinion. I'll add that in my opinion that I need to add. It's a matter of personal liberty, and if your beliefs are such, then a woman has the right to do with her body what she wants.
All right,
you haven't addressed my issue. You haven't addressed my issue at all. My question is if they believe that it is murder, and he suggested that he did, then how is it okay for anyone else to do it but not himself?
Because he also understands that it's a personal choice. That he never used the word murder for one. He said that his belief is that life begins at conception, and you can make a syllogism of it and say yes, therefore that's
Did he
murder.
have to spell it out for you? I mean, if life begins at conception, it's murder. I mean,
actually, let's dial it back because it's actually starting to make me angry too. Because, with all due respect, when you draw a parallel, a red herring parallel like you did, let's say life begins at the 3rd year after birth or the 4th year after birth. Let's not talk nonsense. Okay, we understand that there's a line to be drawn, but let's not make the counter arguments so out of the ordinary.
Why not? Why should Peter Singer not be allowed to kill his newborn child? Because that's what he believes.
And I'm telling you that we have to have a line to draw somewhere, and if we say and listen, it goes back to there are plenty of people that don't think that a fetus that's 8 weeks in utero can sustain itself outside the womb, and so and again, I'm not talking about my personal belief, but if somebody's 8 weeks pregnant and they have a embryo in their body that can't possibly survive outside of the womb, that there's an issue there. I mean, you want to totally disregard the fact that a woman needs to have some sort of control of her own body. You're saying
it's
that once she's
murder, it's not.
All right.
And for you, Paul, it is that simple. And for me, it's pretty much that simple. But you know what? For other people, it's not. And it's okay. That's what if we're going to have a country that people have freedom to figure out what's right for them and what's wrong for them within reason, then I think it's okay for the people to have a difference of opinion. What Joe Biden was trying to say was, it's not for me to tell them what's right and wrong.
But that ignores the issue.
Up to a certain point.
That's a talking point that sounds great if you don't pay attention to the substance underneath. Because that's something you can say that, well, I think everybody has different beliefs, and I'm not going to force my beliefs on others. Well, who can object to that? But the issue is abortion, and when it comes down to it, the difference between pro-life and pro-choice positions are the pro-lifers believe that the fetus is a human being with every right of a human being. Pro-choicers don't. All the issues about a woman's right to choose, a woman's right this and that, is irrelevant. Because
no, it's not irrelevant, though.
It's not irrelevant.
It's not irrelevant. It's irrelevant to you.
For a mother's right to kill her newborn baby. Because at that point, the life of the baby outweighs the mother's right to choose. At the same time, nobody's arguing to take away a woman's right to an appendectomy. Because nobody cares, because the appendix is not a living human being. That's what the entire abortion debate comes down to. Is it alive or is it not alive? Is it a human life or not?
No,
that's to go out and say, yes, I think it's a human life, but I'm not going to defend that life, is a completely cynical and empty argument to make.
All right, guys, I'm going to cut you all off there because obviously this will never go anywhere. Let me take this from a different approach, all right? Forget about your particular beliefs that you have on this subject, but let me ask you something. As a completely ignorant person, looking at the process of how our democracy works, it's a little simpler to talk about, senators and House of Representatives. They are there to represent their constituency. They're there to represent the people that voted them into office. And they may not have a particular belief that matches exactly what everybody voted them in for, but let's just talk about it like this. You have a vice president who has a particular belief. He actually sides with both you and Danon and Paul and probably Nick, but he thinks that his main body of voters thinks this way. Over here they say that they probably want more rights. Which is the right thing for him to do? To vote or to try and push things into his personal belief system, or to try and push the beliefs of the people that voted him in mass? That's my question, and I'm not saying there is a right answer. I'm asking you to consider that and kind of give me feedback on what that idea.
Can you? I'm not sure I fully understand. Are you saying that should a candidate bring his own beliefs in, or should he try to represent the beliefs of the people who voted for him?
That's exactly what I'm asking. That's exactly it.
Danon for moderator.
Well,
I understood what John was saying perfectly.
Okay, well, Mitch, go ahead and reply first, and I want each of you to reply to that idea.
I think that he does have to represent the people that elected him in, and that's what he was doing. He was asked the question, the very specific question that was asked is, as a Catholic, how do you stand on this? And he said that my personal opinion is this, but I completely respect other people in their beliefs. And that is his way, and a number of politicians' way, of representing their constituents even though their beliefs might not be in line with them.
Okay, simple enough. And Danon, go ahead and reply to that.
You want me to reply specifically on abortion or in general?
Either one.
In general, yeah. I mean, it's a little bit of both, because if obviously we're a representative republic, it's not a pure democracy, and so every politician, the president and congressmen, senators, all of them have to bring in their own personal beliefs to an extent, particularly on classified or very specific information that the general public isn't informed about. At the same time, yeah, I don't know. I guess it's a good idea to keep an eye on the polls and to keep an idea of what your constituents want. But I think just the fact of politicians having to seek re-election sort of brings that into the mix. Some, and maybe I'm among them, would.
Oh no!
Oh
no! Technical difficulties. Sorry about that. Unfortunate for Dana to drop out in the middle. I actually was
ready anxiously awaiting that.
To hear the rest of what he had to say. All right, we'll give him a few seconds to try and get back in, and I'll just sort of restate this. The idea that I'm questioning about is which is the most correct path in your opinions, everybody here and everybody in the audience, that you think that your representative, whether that be somebody at your state level all the way up to the president, vice president, what's the most correct path for them to take, which is either their own personal viewpoint, which may or may not exactly match their constituency, and granted, they're not going to know. Or
and he's back.
Welcome back, Dana. Or is it going to be, taking the stance of what they believe their majority population that voted for them would want? And Dana and I was just summarizing this break, take up a little time while you got back together with us.
Sure.
So continue what you were saying. We were all interested.
Yeah, no, I'm not sure at what point it cut out.
I
kind of finished talking and I noticed nobody was moving.
Just back up like a paragraph if you can.
Basically, we're not a representative republic, so people have to bring their own individual morality into it to an extent. But also, the opinion of the electorate is important, and I think generally the fact that politicians have to seek re-election sort of brings that into the mix. Pretty much every politician is concerned about getting re-elected except for second-term presidents, but most of them become interested in their legacy, I guess.
Okay, and so which one do you think is the more correct path for any particular politician to take? Not necessarily on abortion, because maybe that's a little more of a hot topic, but
sure.
Just in general, which way do you think they should go? Which way do you think they should lead?
It's got to be a little bit of both, but I think ideally we want politicians who will act on their own scruples, I guess. I think there's a little bit too much reading of the polls there, which is why politicians have the reputation of saying whatever they have to say to get elected or speaking different things to different crowds and all that.
Okay. That works.
I think we need somebody who embodies an ideal, and the ideals of the right or the left or whoever.
Okay, so in your opinion, it's better for them to basically stick with their gut. If this is what they believe is right, that's what they should carry on in their policies.
Yeah, I guess you could look at it sort of like a manager too, or even a commander of an army or something that in the end they need to take leadership and make the decisions, but the good ones listen to the people under them. I don't like to think of a president that way necessarily, but a good manager will listen to the people under him, but then in the end of the day will make a decision based on what he feels is right.
Okay. Nick, what's your thoughts on that?
I think it's a hard question to answer. I know it should be easy, but it is kind of hard. I think
because it was hard.
If things are working the way they should in theory, two things would happen. One is if you're not representing your constituents effectively, you'd be voted off. You'd be voted out when it came time for re-election. The reality is that's not how it really works. It happens in certain cases, but I think we've come to realize with a Congress for decades now that's had an approval rating under 40% or whatever. I mean, I can't remember the last time we had a Congress that people thought was effective. It becomes really clear that name recognition and their ability to raise campaign funds, that plays into whether or not you get reelected more often than not. And, so I would say, in theory, you should be voting. You should be voting for your constituents and what they want. But I think Dana says it right. You have to have some sort of stance yourself, and that's what should get you elected in the first place. I think probably the most important thing though is that whatever the candidate chooses or whatever that government official chooses is that they're consistent. That if they're going to constantly vote their personal stances, that they do that as they do that regularly. That's how they go. That's how they approach government. And if they're going to put aside their personal beliefs and values to vote what clearly is their constituents' positions, then they should do that on a regular basis as well. I'd just be more happy to see consistency.
Okay, that's fair. All right, Paul, how about you?
Honestly, I think they should all pretty much vote the way I say. All right. No, actually, honestly, I agree with these guys. I think it has to be an equal mix. Ideally, you know, what gets them elected will be what keeps them in office. The ideas that get them elected, ideally, would be, you know, something that they hold deeply as a strong world belief, and you know, that would keep them elected if they do stay elected. So I'm saying nothing new here.
I think in a perfect world, politicians or political candidates would be honest about what they personally believe, and then the people would decide, yeah, he represents me, or no, he doesn't. And then we wouldn't have to worry about whether he listens to his own conscience or whether he listens to the people. Which is another reason why I find that the abortion statement from Mr. Biden so cynical, I guess.
Let's not bring that up again.
Yeah. John, you're talking. I can't hear you talking. I don't know if anybody else can.
John's on mute.
How about that? Is that better?
There you go.
That works.
Okay. I've been flapping my gums and you guys haven't been hearing anything. But anyway, nothing I said was important, so it's good. But back to Paul for a second. I understand that reality is this way. I think we've got that pretty well clarified here through what everybody said already. But in your opinion, which is a better situation, where one completely leads exactly by what's in his heart, or if he leads more by, and I know you say it's somewhere in the middle, but if you had to choose a direction for it to lean, would you have him lean towards representing his constituency or towards just following whatever his belief is more directly?
Well, ideally, they'd be the same.
Right, but let's say that's not that case. Which do you think is a more right way to go?
If I have a strongly held view, I'm Mr. Congressman or whatever, and I have a strongly held view, and it disagrees with what my constituency has to say. Is that what you're asking?
Yeah, I'm asking which is your job, to represent or to be who you are and lead that way because you think that's why people voted you in.
Well, I think if there are differences, I think that it would be more important to make the decisions that you feel are correct.
Okay. All right, and that's kind of the feeling. I'm trying to get an idea from you guys how you think that works, because in some people's opinions, the job of our leaders is to represent us, not to necessarily make decisions for us. But in other cases, and again, in an ideal world, you'd want all of our leaders to think like we do and have the same moral compass as we do and all that, but that's not always the case, and it's never going to be the case, at least altogether. So it's just interesting to see which way you guys think it would go, and which way you think it should go, because I think that is a difference. And like Danon said, it's a republic, it's not a pure democracy, so that certainly has something to do with it.
And in reality, I mean, the people that we elect generally do know a little bit more about the situations as they're playing out. So, I mean, oftentimes we probably don't give them enough leeway, but because of that fact. But
yeah, particularly national security. I wouldn't want that left up to votes from the general public. I mean, there are lots of classified information surrounding any kinds of decision that's made.
Sure, and
whether it's war, or whether it's diplomacy, or whatever.
That's more of a special case where
right.
You know the public doesn't have that information, but you know the abortion issue is something that there's nothing classified about it. It's a concept that is going to get the attention, and obviously a lot of emotions get tied up in it, just like all you guys did just now. So
I would much prefer that a political candidate simply be honest about who he is, get voted with that mandate, and then act according to who he is. I would much prefer that Joe Biden simply say I'm pro-choice than to try to play both sides. And I would view any Republican that would say something like that with just as much cynicism.
He personally is not pro-choice, and he came out and said that.
Then
he said that it's. But he said that.
We're gonna start another show.
Well, no, and I'm gonna cut you off, Mitch, because we've gone through it. Yeah, we've gone there, and this is the point of my question, is because that's exactly what I'm asking. You know, Danon, you want him to be who he is and screw who he's representing. And I apologize, I'm dramatizing quite a bit here, but that's the idea. Whereas, you know, Mitch, you want him to tell the truth, and if he's pro-choice yet he feels like he wants to represent the people that voted him in because he believes that they have that particular viewpoint, you think that that's appropriate and that that's the right way to do it. Obviously, it's not always going to work out this way, but it's a very polarized issue, and it's something that even our group can get completely insane about, apparently. But anyway, I'm going to... Yeah, you'll be okay, I'm sure. But I'm going to end the show.
I'll talk to Mitch offline.
Yeah, you guys are getting a fisticuffs, I'm sure. But I'm going to end the show because we've gone about 45 minutes already, and we've really cruised through this. And I thank everybody for their time and opinions, of course. And more emotion. Hey, it's always good. It shows we're still human. So, guys, thanks again for your time. And that's it for this edition of the Political Soup Podcast. I'm John Toll, and these are the guys. We're signing off. Have a good night.